My name is Liam Gearity. I'm the director of hospitality at Frank Family Vineyards, and we're here today on the Winston Hill Vineyard at the Red Barn with three great fathers of Frank Family Vineyards, four great fathers, including myself. Yeah, yeah. I am a father too, so let me include myself. Myself and three other fathers from Frank Family Vineyards. We have Tony Zepeda from the tasting room, one of our wine educators. We have Todd Graff, the winemaker and general manager of Frank Family Vineyards, and of course, Rich Frank, proprietor of Frank Family Vineyards. We're going to be tasting four wines from our estate tier, four fabulous wines that are special to us. And we'll talk a little bit about them today, as well as share some stories about being a dad and being a son and our relationships with fathers and sons. And we want to keep it loose today and just have fun. So we'll be doing the 2017 vintage Lewis Vineyard Pinot Noir, the 2017 Childs Valley Zinfandel, as well as the 2016 Patriarch Cabernet Sauvignon. And then to wrap it up, something a little sweet and something a little different, our port wine. Todd, you'll be sharing with us the Pinot Noir, if you'd like to start today.
Great. So this wine comes from the Lewis Vineyard down in Carneros, named after Rich and Leslie's eldest grandson, Lewis. I chose this one because in 2003 we didn't make Pinot Noir. And Rich had 80 acres down in Carneros, and 10 acres were fallow. And we needed to decide what we were going to do with those 10 acres. And the easy, obvious choice would have been to plant more Chardonnay. We do well with that, and we need it. But I wanted to introduce Pinot Noir to the portfolio. So Rich was brave enough or trusting enough to allow me to plant 10 acres. And this is the reward of that. And we've been making it ever since. And so I kind of brought it into the family as the father at a day theme. And what's kind of fun is I look at all these as all my children, and this is the newest member of the family, really, the Pinot Noir. And a question I get asked all the time: which is your favorite wine to make, to drink? And I always go, it's like children. You know, they're all my children. Which is your favorite child? And I usually say, well, which one didn't throw the rock through the window today? Or which one didn't crash the car? A little too early? Too early? Okay, sorry. So it depends on what day it is, and it's fun to have all these wines to share and drink. And then it kind of reminds me of my dad, who wasn't much of a wine drinker. So this would have been Pinot to him, and he liked a good Merlot. So he wasn't much into wine, but he liked to pronounce his T's. So again, great Pinot Noir for all meals included, and it's drinking delicious. The 17's drinking delicious right now.
I remember when Todd first brought the first vintage in, and I quite honestly had forgotten that we were going to start growing this. And the time it came up now and then, but I never really focused on it. And it was one day I walked into the tasting room and Todd said, "Taste this," which is not unusual. We're always tasting wines. And I went, "Wow, this is good. Whose is it?" And he said, "It's ours." And I went, wow. I forgot that we had planted the 10 acres down there because we were so Cabernet-centric, Chardonnay-centric at the time. But it just ended up being just such a perfect place to grow Pinot grapes.
It's a great little rolling knoll that comes down in Carneros and then leads into San Pablo Bay. So it's just a great spot. Turns out great wine.
It is great, absolutely.
And this is something you can drink. I mean, we get asked that also. What do you drink this with? What do you pair this with? Well, short of the fact that we're doing it here and it's great by itself, I find that my favorite pairing for this particular wine is like a great piece of salmon off of a grill. Just
fabulous.
Thick piece of salmon, so it's sort of still semi rare in the middle.
Yeah.
And just this in a salad, and that is, to me, is an unbelievable pairing.
All the poultry, fowl, pork, even, amazing.
Todd, what did your dad think of your career in wine?
I honestly don't think he had a clue what winemaking was. My dad was a truck driver, and that's what he knew. So I just can't imagine when I said, I'm going away to college to go study winemaking. Not on my dime, you're not. So yeah, no, I don't really think he understood the whole process a whole bunch. But like I said, but he appreciated it after the fact that if I could bring a bottle of wine home and he can share it. Another great story. when I traveled around the world, I didn't have a lot of wine, but what I had, I put under their house. And then when I finally came back a year later, and I had to move back home till I got a job, and there's a bottle of this Schaefer Cabernet on the counter, and I'm like, this is one of my best wines I own, and it's half empty. And I was like, Dad, how was it? And he goes, I don't know, I didn't drink it. I used it to make spaghetti. You know? So then I had to move my wine from out of their house because they were just using it to cook with. Yeah. So so it was funny.
That is hysterical. We all have those different little stories because all of our fathers, no matter if you're ours or anyplace else, all had their own stories, and we sort of picked up from them and have some of those traits. Maybe worry about or wonder about what our kids are going to do and where they're going to go with it, and my age where the grandchildren are going to go with it. But it's something that does, the traits inside that get passed down.
Yeah.
See, your dad may not have known what you were going to do, but he was proud that you were going to do it.
No, totally agree.
And I think that's a lot of what great families are. It's each generation creates their own. Very rarely, although we think it does do people just take over from what their father's doing. You may have a small business, and that may have, but they instill in you various virtues that you go on and then expand it into what's your interest.
Yeah. My dad was never a huge wine fan too, but I know this would have been something that he loved because, you know, when I think about what made my dad happy, and when we would have a glass of wine, he'd say, "I like it because it's smooth." That was always a big character for him. He liked the wines that were a little rounder, a little silkier, and I think especially as we reach the tail end of the 17. I mean, that's really showing up in this. That ease and elegance of the Pinot Noir grape is really on display here.
Should we spend a moment and just talk about how Pinot relates to Burgundy?
Sure. Well,
that was a leading thing. So go ahead and do that.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
As most of you know, Pinot Noir comes from Burgundy in France, as the Chardonnay. Thus, we have our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir planted in our vineyard in Carneros, the Lewis Vineyard, gently rolling hills going into San Pablo Bay. Again, coolest part of Napa Valley we planted it. Rich and Leslie have 80 acres down there, and most of it to Chardonnay. And then our neighbors around there, we buy fruit from them also. But again, this one is 100% from the Lewis Vineyard. But coolest part of Napa Valley, we planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir to simulate what they do in Burgundy. Same clones as Dijon. So they're kind of our mentors, but we'll never make a Burgundian wine. We're making Pinot Noir in California.
Well, that's the point, is that in France it's called by the area, the region, and here we're very specific, as we are in the United States for almost everything. We call it exactly by the grape and exactly the area it comes from, and you tell everybody everything about that wine from the bottle. You want to touch on AVAs and Napa versus...
You can see a lot of that actually similar in a great Napa Valley Cabernet. First and foremost, or any Napa Valley wine, the most important thing is that those two words, Napa Valley. 100% of the fruit has to come from the Napa Valley to put that label on the bottle. But as you get more specific in terms of where the fruit comes from, you get more opportunity to include that specificity on the bottle. For example, with the Lewis Vineyard Pinot Noir, we've got 3 layers of specificity, both the growing region, Napa Valley, then the AVA, Carneros, and then finally, most important, the single vineyard specificity of the Lewis Vineyard.
Good.
We have some questions, I believe, to highlight and to talk about today through our tasting. Marissa McCann, our marketing manager here, is going to join us.
Hi, everyone. We have a question from Nancy Williams. She's asking that in Charlotte, she can find only 150 Carneros Pinot. She wants to know what's the difference between the Carneros Pinot with the Lewis Pinot. She's enjoying the one she has now.
So just what we were talking about, that site specificity, how specific you get in terms of where the fruit's coming from. When you're building out a wine, and Todd will talk maybe more about this, but when you want to create enough wine to satisfy some distribution and have wines in Charlotte or Atlanta or Miami or throughout the country, the source of fruit then becomes a little bit broader.
Yeah, no, we talked about Carneros. Our neighbors next door, the Beckstoffers, grow Pinot Noir also. We buy some fruit from them. Friends and family, the San Giacomos over in Sonoma Carneros, we buy fruit from them. So we buy fruit from other growers also to put into the Carneros blend that you're drinking, the 2018. So it's an appellation blend versus a single vineyard blend. So a little different style of wine, but again, all 100% Pinot Noir, all from Carneros versus just a single vineyard wine.
And because this is a single vineyard wine, it obviously limits our capacity for production. These are wines that we're featuring today that we make very little of. And we feature them through our membership program, and we feature them in our online store. So if you're loving the wines that you find in your local retail market and want to explore another level of what Frank Family does, visiting our online site at frankfamilyvineyards.com is a great way to find out about some of those other wines that we make that we just don't have enough of to share throughout the country. Tony, you're doing Zinfandel
I'm
today.
the Zinfandel. Yeah, so I'll tell you the reason why I like the Zinfandel, and then a little quick story as well about my dad, how I got into the wine business. So my dad came here in the 70s from Mexico, started doing vineyard management. About 13 years old, wanted to go work for him. So, so summers, 3 months off in the summer, what to do? Small town, not much. So went off to work and started, working the vineyards, long days, hot days, and that was my introduction to the wine business. And so all we would do was pretty much plant vineyards. So planting Cabernet all day, every day, Cab everywhere. So Cab, 13 years old, a little too heavy, so my dad always give me a little tiny sip, maybe as big as this little port here. It was Zinfandel, a little bit easier to drink, so I kind of got my introduction to that wine there. So Zinfandel is, important wine for me, for my dad and I, because we try to drink it together as we cooking as well. Good summer wine drinking, and then so I got into the wine business that way. Introduction. Our high school here in St. Lena, offers winemaking class as well. So I did that a couple of years. So
let me interject for a second. What Tony's talking about too, in St. Helena, in the generation before me, they let school out in September and October because all the kids had to harvest grapes back in the old days.
Amazing.
So the grape harvest was more important than the studies back in the 50s and 60s.
I think we should go back to that. I think that was a good way to do it.
Great, because everybody we needed the help and we needed the labor, and so the kids did the work. So they let them out of school during harvest.
Especially, busy time during that time, And so, this is why I love the Zinfandel. It's awesome, grilling, out there eating wine, summer red wine. We grow this in Charles Valley, which is kind of east of here, so right kind of behind us where we're at. So a little bit warm in that area, so the breeze comes up from Carneros as we're talking about. A little bit of Petit Sauce added to this, so, because of mid-palate rounds it up a little bit more. So
and a great summertime wine, too, for its food pairing. I mean, when you talk about what to pair with Zinfandel, you're talking about food coming off the grill. Juicy burgers, ribs, anything coming out of a big green egg, slow cooked smoked dishes, fall off the bone tender. This is barbecue's best friend in terms of a great wine.
Everybody knows I talk about that all the time. Anything that hits a grill is Zinfandel's best friend. And, Leslie laughs at me a lot because there's two of us generally at home, and I say if I'm going to the grill, it's a two bottle of Zin night. One when I'm cooking it and one when we go in to eat it. It's just so perfect with anything that you put on the grill. I love it with spicy chicken wings or with a great rack of ribs. It's just phenomenal. And it just makes a perfect night, easy.
And Tony, it's not so recent anymore, but you're a new dad.
Yeah, so I have a almost 2-year-old daughter.
That's crazy,
so,
almost 2.
Yeah, I didn't understand when everybody, when they come and visit me, and I would tell them, we're expecting, or say, hey, time flies, enjoy. Now I know what they mean, because 2 years just flew by so far. So it is, so it's time's flying, and then we're gonna have expecting a new little one in October. So. Yeah,
oh my gosh,
during
that's
harvest.
awesome.
And you had an unveiling party, didn't you?
A little bit, it was online.
One of the pink and blue ones or something?
Yeah, so we gotta, shoot the thing.
And what color?
Blue.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little boy now.
Oh wow, that's great. Congrats.
So trying to catch up to Todd. So
Tony, we talked about how place matters so much with Carneros and the Pinot Noir. I think the same could be said about Zinfandel as well.
Exactly.
You don't find a ton of Zinfandel growing in Napa Valley, but where you find it and the locations that are set aside and that are chosen specifically for Zin, they make a lot of sense. And this is a site-specific Zin, and I think it really comes through in the wine.
Yeah, it needs a little more heat, you know, a little bit bigger berry, and so we need to grow it, you know, where it's a little bit warmer because it ripens up a little bit more. Cabernet, Merlot could handle heat, you know, but not as well as the Zinfandel can. So
we work with this great family, this Sinceri Nicolini family, who's been farming out there for hundreds of years, and they've got a niche in this Charles Valley. And Charles Valley is this kind of diagonal valley that goes off Napa that's surrounded by the Vaca Mountains. So you got the Vaca Mountains, you got this little Charles Valley, and then you wind away up to the hills up near Berryessa. So Vaca Mountains, Charles Valley, and it's really only 15, 20 minutes from here, but it's all through the windy roads.
It's
and
still part of Napa.
It's still Napa Valley. It's a sub-appellation, no different than Carneros is a sub-appellation. Charles Valley, Rutherford. These are all sub-appellations, and Charles Valley is one of them, and it's mainly known for Zinfandel. Yeah. And we're lucky to have this relationship with the Nicolini and Sinceri families that have been farming out there for a couple generations.
We're going to continue to talk about location. And let me just say that this happened starting to an extreme starting in the early 90s. What happened was we had this terrible infestation of phylloxera, which killed an awful lot of, or almost all of the vines here in Napa. And we were all forced to replant. And what had happened is before that, if you came up here earlier in the 50s and before that, if you had 40 acres, you planted 10 acres of Chardonnay and 10 acres of Cabernet and 10 acres of Zinfandel. So you had some of each. But as the years went on, we all found out that Cabs and the Bordeaux varietals grew better up valley, and the Pinot and the Chardonnay grew better down valley near the San Pablo Bay where it was cooler. So when everybody had to pull out and replant in the early 90s, they put the right varietal in the right area. So what was a disaster at the time, because the cost was staggering to everybody, ended up being what I believe made Napa Valley what it is today, because the wines, the varietals are now grown in the right areas, so we get the best of each of the varietals because they're planted in the right place.
Todd, Zinfandel, is it in Napa forever? Does it have a future? Is it getting moved out?
It's a difficult question. It's and it becomes an economic question almost. As Napa Valley proper, where we're at, Rutherford, Oakville, Stag's Leap, St. Helena, Calistoga, becomes Cabernet-centric at the moment. It doesn't allow for much new planting of Zinfandel. So you go to the outlier areas, and that's where Charles Valley has found its niche. Yeah. And up in Capel and the outer skirts of proper Napa. But there are still some great vineyards. Our Napa tier, so as the question was asked earlier about the difference between Pinot Noirs, very similar wines here. Vineyard designate Zinfandel versus our Napa Zin. Our Napa Zin has 50-year-old vine planted in the 50s, so now they're 60-plus-year-old vines from Calistoga, St. Helena. So we have some of those old great vineyards in our Napa tier.
Yeah. Terrific. Right. Will we move on, or do we?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll do a little Patriarch maybe next.
Nope. Yeah. Commercial break.
So, hi, it's Leslie, and I'm off camera. But before we get to the Patriarch, we have a trivia question for the folks at home.
Oh.
So
don't answer.
Okay. We don't answer.
The first no, you don't answer. It's not a test for you. I would assume that you all, the four of you, know the answer, and if you don't, well, you have to report to HR on Monday.
Again?
We have 4 trivia questions throughout this hour, and the first person to answer the question correctly in the chat section, and Marissa is monitoring the chat section right now, will win a $100 gift certificate to use in the shop section on our website, frankfamilyvineyards.com, to purchase wine or any merchandise.
Can we get paid to help?
Can you what?
Can we get paid to help?
No, you cannot.
We get $50?
No.
No sign language, no giving tips.
Getting paid in the wine that you're consuming.
Steal second.
All right. What mountain range is the Childs Valley AVA located near? What mountain range is the Childs Valley AVA located near?
Can I answer? Can I?
No, you are not allowed.
No.
Dennis Sedonka? Yes.
Dennis
Sedonka.
Whoa, he knows too much. He knows us. Yeah, he's a professional.
Is there a ringer in there?
It's all right, as long as he's not an employee at Frank Family Vineyards.
Hi, Dennis.
Congratulations, Dennis.
How you doing, Dennis?
And before we move on to the Patriarch, which has a great story, and I know that is a very special wine for us, Rich, one that we made for your father. But I have a question from Brian Peters, who is asking about the Pinot Noir. He says that, directed to Todd and Rich, that the Pinot is very approachable at the very beginning, but how does the Pinot age? And same question for the Cabernets, but I think let's start with the Pinot.
We'll let the pro answer that first.
Sure. So I'm going to use the same answer for both, but the scale is going to shift a little bit for both. So we answer this question on a lot of these virtual, so I apologize if we're saying this for the people that have watched more than one. But aging wine has a bell curve, just like aging humans has a bell curve. We all start little and we come up, we hit our plateau, and hopefully the plateau is longer for some of us. And then we start going down the backside, and wines do the exact same. Pinot Noirs are usually a lighter wine. Now, there's going to be exceptions to everything I say here. There's the global classics that age forever, but Pinot Noir typically is a lighter red wine than Cabernet Sauvignon. So you're just going to move that bell curve a little earlier, and maybe the plateau's not as high, and it's going to come down a little. Where Cabernet Sauvignon, you're going to shift it to the right a little bit, and it's going to, and that slope is going to be a little longer. The plateau may be a little higher, and it may take a little while to go down the backside. So again, and the trick is what you like. It's not what we say. It's, do you like more fresh fruit, more structure, or do you like more dried fruits, more softness? So it's really what you like. And in my opinion, if you can figure out where it hits that top, you're brilliant. Drink the hell out of it then. Yeah,
and the sweet spot is different, like you say, for everybody, because we all like different things. And ask me what I like today, and then ask me what I like in 5 years, and the answer will probably be different. So and to me, that's one of the fun things about a relationship with wine, about enjoying wine, and about tasting and with intent, and about being open to really thinking about it and enjoying it. Is that you connect with it at certain times and ways, and then you grow and you evolve.
And if you're going to make a mistake on the early side, in my opinion. The last thing you want to find is 3 bottles of this Pinot Noir in 25 years in your cellar, and it's probably gone over the hill, and you didn't get to enjoy them at their peak or even early. Like this is 17. This is as early as it gets, and it's drinking delicious. So make the mistake on the early side, not on the late side, if you have to. And then how you store it. Not everybody has a brilliant cellar. So if you're in a warmer house, that curve is going to shift. If you're in if you put it in a refrigerator for its whole life, it's probably going to flatline, you know. So, and if it's hot, it probably goes more of a triangle. So, so storage is important, but not everybody has perfect. So you have to adjust accordingly.
I love I haven't thought about this before, but being the oldest one in the group, I think about it now. Your bell-shaped curve on what's happening. If you think about it, during that beginning period of the bell shape, just about us, because we're talking about fathers, that's when you take care of your kids.
Yeah.
And when you get to the other side of it, it's when they're starting to take care of you.
Lily, are you listening?
Because they're starting their own bell curve on the other side.
Right.
And it's really interesting, it is. And because all of what happens in the middle there. And it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
Rich, this is a tasting of fathers from Frank Family Vineyards, talking about wine as we move into Father's Day. I think there's one wine from our portfolio that resonates when we talk about fathers more than any other, and of course, it's our wine called Patriarch. And this is a special wine that we make, that Todd has been making since the 2012 vintage, and it's a wine with a story.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell it. I hope I get through it. as I get older, you also get emotional. I always wanted to make a wine for my dad. He was very special to me. He was very special as we look back at what America is about today. He was born here. He was first generation of parents that came over from what was Poland and is now Lithuania. He lived in Flatbush in Brooklyn. Started school early and learned English, and which wasn't easy, and just grew up there. When he got older, he was looking for something to do. You mentioned your dad was a truck driver. He was driving some trucks to drop off meat for a meat company he was working for, and Pearl Harbor came along, and I had just been born, and my dad enlisted in the Army, was sent to England, where he was put on ships on D-Day and landed with the 4th Wave on Omaha Beach. Because he knew how to drive trucks, he was assigned to drive trucks with the oil for Patton's tanks and drove all through France, ending up going through the Battle of the Bulge in France, and coming back to Brooklyn and starting a new business with his friend Gus, who had been at home, and making enough money for me to be the first person in our family to be able to go to college. And that talks to me about what the American dream is and what you can do here if you put your mind to it. You don't have to have anything to start with. You just have to have the energy and the willingness and the guts to stick it out and develop it. And because of that, he was so supportive. When we finally got into this business, I had said to Todd for a number of years that I wanted to make a wine for my dad. And 9 wasn't quite right, and 10 wasn't quite right, 11. And when we were getting ready for harvest in 12, Todd said to me, "This is it." And the timing was perfect because my dad was about 95 at the time, and the 12 came out, and we were able to give it to my dad on his 98th birthday with the whole family around. And it was, to say it was emotional was saying nothing. It was special, but Todd went out of his way, and this wine has always been special to us. And it's just, we tell the story I just told you on the back label. And I guess give you one more example, because we're talking about dads growing up. When Leslie was writing the back label, she was telling this story, it's all written there. And she was running out of space, you'll see, it's a huge back label. And she said he came back from the war and he started a meat business, Heidi's Meat Company. And he said to Leslie, "With my partner Gus." And Leslie was looking for space, obviously, and she said, "Well, Gus has been dead for 30 years. He has no family. No one's going to know." And he said, "I know." And that to me is a statement of morals and ethics that you can't teach. So you can talk about the wine now, because I've just gotten emotional where I said I wasn't going to.
Well, we appreciate that,
Yeah.
Rich. Yeah, no, because we all have great memories of our fathers, and you tell that really well about yours.
This is the 2016 vintage Patriarch. Patriarch, if you're familiar with our wines, Patriarch is a wine that comes from the Winston Hill Vineyard. And Winston Hill is where we are today, and 100% of the fruit for Patriarch is coming from this vineyard. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, taken from the Heart Block, which is what we refer to as kind of the central, our name for the central area here.
Let me give a big picture. So Winston Hill's here, and it's funny how Rich named his first vineyard after his dog at the time. But subsequently, the vineyards that have come along have been named after the grandchildren. We talked earlier about Lewis down in Carneros. Across the road is the youngest grandchildren, Benjamin, which Rich and I like to lie a lot. It's a driver and a 9-iron from here, but it's probably 3 drivers, and
unless you're Rory McIlroy, it may be a driver and a 3-wood, but yeah.
And then we have up in the highlands on the eastern flank of Atlas Peak, up in Capel Valley, is S&J for Stella and Jeremy, that have some Cabernet, Zinfandel, and Petit Syrah. So you take that big picture of vineyards, and now we come into Rutherford here again as the Heart Block makes this up of Cabernet, which is, this is 100% Cabernet. And every year, I don't know really why, when we blind taste the Cabernets that come off this property, the Heart Block, Block 5, is the best every year. And this was back in the days before we had perfect clonal selection. We were guessing on rootstocks. We're a little more scientific today than we were when we planted this. And every year, it makes the best wine off the property. It's
great. I should have mentioned my grandchildren earlier. And I'm so glad that we did this. Yeah, Lewis is in Providence at Johnson & Wales studying to be a chef. So it goes back a ways. And Stella just started school at Wisconsin last year. Unfortunately, got sent home for the summer with everybody else, but she's going back in the fall. Jeremy's getting ready to apply to colleges as a senior, and the most junior guy, Benjamin, is there. I'm glad my children are getting a little older because I don't want to buy any more vineyards to name them after. But it's just so proud for Leslie and I to have the vineyards named after the grandchildren. It's just a tie to where the future is.
From a tasting note perspective about Patriarch, I mean, this wine is phenomenal. It's intensely potent and powerful.
Yours is half empty already.
I gave myself a very short pour at the beginning.
If you don't like it, don't drink it.
I worry about your math. Did you say that's half?
I didn't want to taste too much of it, so I gave myself a short pour. But no, this wine is phenomenal.
And that aging question, this is still at the infant stage.
Yeah,
this one's crawling. It hasn't even learned to walk yet.
And that's what's so amazing about Patriarch is that while it has that potential for incredible cellar growth, just so enjoyable, so immensly enjoyable in its youthful state. It's a very special wine.
Like your daughter, Luna. It's still fun when she's
running around.
Yeah, when you get old, you don't have the patience for that anymore. I don't know if you mentioned
it's 100% Cabernet.
100% Cabernet. Yeah, that's right.
You don't see that too much in Napa Valley either. Yeah, so you see a lot of blends in Napa. So 100% Cabernet. You know, it's kind of hard to find, and it's hard to make a good 100% cab, and this always nails it. Todd and Rich nail this one here every year.
Todd, you've said something in the past when you talk about winemaking about just getting out of the fruit's way. Is this the type of wine
This is the wine, yes.
Yeah.
The other ones might need a little sculpting, but this one is just take the cream of the crop and look good every year. We're lucky. This vineyard, and I don't know if the camera looks above us or not, but I'm assuming it does. This is a top 5 Napa Valley vineyard up here. So we get incredible fruit every year. We're spoiled in Napa Valley. Our climate is better than most wine growing regions of the world. I mean, look at this weather right now, and this is what we live in almost 9 months out of the year. So it's great. So we're very spoiled, and it allows us to make these delicious wines.
Why don't you talk, since you just mentioned it, talk for a second or two about the difference between being on the hillside and maybe Benjamin, it's across the street that's on the flat. What the difference?
Sure. So for my aspect, as you see this is all rocky, volcanic soil, very thin soil, a lot of rock, very stressed. We got more rain in March or April this year than we did all winter. Yeah, so you see these big plush vines because we got a lot of rain in April. So it's very thin soil, very rocky, and so very intense, very concentrated. More black fruits when you think of blackberries. Across the road on the valley floor, a little more fertile, a little deeper soils, a little more productive. I think you get a little more red fruits. A little more cherry, more plum aroma. So the blends are fun to work with, to use the different components.
Hi, I'm back.
Welcome back.
I have another trivia question because we want to see who at home is paying attention. So we just finished talking about the Patriarch. What is the name of the vineyard block? The vineyard block from which our Patriarch comes from. What is the name of the
I know.
Can't answer it, guys. Can't answer it.
First person to answer
we can
correctly.
give hints.
Don't do
No,
it.
no.
Don't do it.
First person to answer correctly in the chat section.
So we have quite a few correct answers.
The first.
We have hard block, but we also have high. So
High's not.
Oh, the first two winners.
who was the first to answer before you even finished the question? He said block 5.
Yeah.
Block 5. So block 5 is correct,
Will the
and
judges
block
accept
5 is the heart block on Winston Hill. So yes, we will, to quote Alex Trebek, I will say that we will accept
Will the judges accept
block
that?
5 as the answer. Yes.
Right. So did we say? I didn't hear. Did we
And
say
it
who
is-
won?
Vance McCabe.
Okay.
Vance McCabe. Thank
There
you,
you go.
Vance, for playing along with us.
And paying attention.
All right, I have another one. And I'm going to do this one now because Rich was just talking about the grandchildren. So while the names are still fresh in your mind, and this one's tricky because I think in our previous virtual tastings, the questions have been pretty easy.
Softballs.
They've been softballs.
Yeah.
So now we're you know what? You guys have all graduated. This is like you're onto like level 3 here. So what are the names of Rich Frank's and Leslie Frank's 4 grandchildren? What are the names of our 4 grandchildren?
Google.
First person to get all 4 names.
It's a tough
correct.
one.
Yeah.
It's not that tough. I mean,
You got to drink a lot of Frank family wine to know this one.
After a bottle last night, I couldn't answer the question.
Another
Aaron
ringer.
Luckett.
Yeah,
Aaron
another
Luckett.
ringer.
Who was that?
Aaron
Oh.
Luckett. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
She got it
Aaron.
all right. Fantastic. $100 gift certificate to.
Okay,
Louis,
For-
Benjamin, Stella, Jeremy.
For $200, what's their middle name?
Watch out, because Daryl will answer that question.
So Louis, Benjamin, Stella, and Jeremy. Of course,
Right.
we have the Louis Vineyard in Carneros, where the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir come from. The Benjamin Vineyard on the floor of Rutherford, across from our Winston Hill Vineyard here, and the S&J Vineyard in Capel Valley, where we grow some little Cabernet, a little Zinfandel, a little Petit Syrah.
Correct.
So there you go,
Stella and Jeremy.
Stella and Jeremy.
Yep.
Yep. All right.
What are we
I'm
up
leaving.
to? You're leaving.
Goodbye.
All right, what do we have next?
Next up is
You're on board.
port.
Yeah.
Right. So this is
Any storm in a port.
this is our Zinfandel port. And you know,
We need to hear a story about your dad.
yeah,
too.
I'll tell you about my dad. So I chose port. Excuse me. I chose port as a wine to share today because I love port first and foremost. And if you're not familiar with port, or if your memories of drinking port were raiding your dad's liquor cabinet like mine were.
My dad rated mine.
I know, right? And he rated Schaefer Hillside Select. That was never found in my dad's liquor cabinet. No. Port wine is a wonderful wine, but it's a wine that requires a little bit more of an introduction. If you're not familiar with port, just a quick word about it. It's a fortified wine. And that term fortified, and the implication of that term, is that the wine is mixed with something stronger than wine. It's mixed with brandy. And the brandy is added to the wine at a rate of, I believe, about 4 to 1, generally speaking.
Yeah, pretty cool. 1 to 4. Yeah, 25%. Yeah.
Yeah, so about a quarter of it,
Yeah,
brandy. And brandy, if you don't know it, brandy is a grape spirit. It's a spirit made from wine.
Distilled-
It's
it's
distilled
distilled
wine.
wine.
It's
Yeah,
wine that's
distilled wine.
heated to the point of alcohol evaporation, and then that evaporation is just reconstituted back into a liquid form, and you separate the water from the alcohol, and you strengthen it. So a fortified wine. I love this stuff, and I love it because it's potent, and it's strong, and it's powerful, and it's rich, and it's full of great flavor. It's the brandy is added to the wine at a time when the natural grape sugars of the wine are still pretty high. So you have a little bit of sweetness, you have a little bit of power, you have a little bit of balance. It's just, for me, it's perfect. And what I love about port, and the reason why I wanted to share port on this Father's Day tasting, it has to do with who my dad was. So my dad was Jim Gearity, and he was a teacher. He was a history teacher. So I came from pretty blue collar roots. My dad, like Rich, was the first in his family to go to college. And the joke about my dad was that he loved college so much he never left, because he stayed on and he became a teacher's assistant at college, and then he became a graduate student at college, and then he became a teacher at colleges, and he spent his whole life at universities. But what I love about my dad was how he could make a story really exciting and really interesting. And as a kid, if I was struggling at school or something, he'd come in and he'd make it fun. He made learning really fun. The story of port to me is such a cool story, because everything has a place where it comes from. So port wine, as the name implies, comes from a port town. It's originally from a place in Portugal called Oporto, and it was fortified because the British, the English people who love to drink wine, can't make wine. You can't make wine in England, but they love to consume wine, particularly those upper crust Brits. They have for centuries loved drinking wine. And their primary source of where they got their wine has been, for many, many years and many centuries, had been France. But to kind of hedge their bets and shore up their production or their line of
or one king pissed off another king.
Yeah, right, right.
And then they said, we don't need you, we'll go here.
That's right, and that's essentially how it came to be. So the British had established some trade relationships with Portugal, and one of the things that they traded for was wine. Now, at the time, wine coming out of Portugal wasn't considered to be of the same high quality as the great French Bordeaux's and the great French Burgundies, but hell, you know, wine is wine at the end of the day. And so during one of these trade wars, one of these kind of times where two countries weren't communicating with each other, the British said, well, we need to get some wine. Let's call our friends down in Portugal and get some of that brought up. Now, the journey, because it had to go by boat, because there was really no land route that the wine could travel. So the journey that the wine would go was by sea, and inside a boat, that wine got really hot, and it would cook, and it would turn bad, it would turn sour. And so when the wine would show up in England, the nobility would open it and drink it and say, this wine is terrible, we can't drink this, the wine's gone bad. So they called down on them and they said, hey, what can we do? What can we do to make that wine a little stronger? What can we do to make that wine strong enough to survive that voyage back to England? And the answer that they came up with was, well, try adding a little bit of brandy. That stuff's pretty strong. That stuff can strengthen it up a little bit. So a little bit of brandy was added, and they said, hey, not only did it keep the wine fresh for the journey, but it tastes pretty good too. So maybe we add a little bit more. Maybe we add it a little earlier. Maybe we tinker with it and toy with it. And maybe try to find that right thing. And so over the course of years, from early 1700s to the mid 1800s, they kind of tinkered and toyed with the recipe until they have essentially what is now considered port today, which is a red wine, partially fermented, where brandy is added in the process to give it a little bit more oomph and maintain a little bit of that natural grape sugars. So I don't know, quite honestly, if my dad loved port or not, but I know he loved history, and I know he loved a good story, and I know he loved telling stories. And I think the story of port, to me, was always so cool when I was a young kid studying wine, just because nothing just happens, you know. Everywhere we are today, every place that we've arrived today in our winemaking and our understanding, it all came from someplace, and it all came from somebody doing something one way, and then the next person saying, well, maybe we should do it a little different, or maybe we should try something different. And so as much as I enjoy drinking port, which I do, I also love the story behind it. And
well, I think you're a chip off the old block then, because you tell a pretty dang good story.
Well, I've been listening to stories from my dad for a long, long time.
So another story of port, which is great, because a lot of winemaking is accidents, and the port had a little accident in there with the added brandy. But the gentleman who's created or credited with a lot of the starting of port in the region, because port was demarcated before Bordeaux was. So they were what we call appellation before Bordeaux, which we always think is the first classified gross. Well, Bordeaux did this before the French did. And there was a gentleman named Baron Forrester, and he's credited with mapping the whole region. And great story. They had to take these boats down the river, and usually they had barrels of wine from the Douro Valley to get to Oporto, the port city, and then off to England. His pockets were so full of gold at the time, his boat dumped and he drowned.
No.
Talk about great stories.
Really?
Yeah, don't put gold in your pockets. Yeah, and he died. And he was the most famous guy at the time.
For this style of wine, for making wine.
And for creating this. And then, but it was before the rivers were dammed and they were pretty, rapids and all this stuff. And and his wife, Donna Alfrina, is, Ferrera Port. She's the most famous woman of port historically, but I love that story of the guy had so much gold in his pockets when he tipped over, he drowned.
Man.
Yeah.
What's also great, just to talk about, we talk about pairings. Port to me, which by the way, you can drink. You can see it's in like a half bottle, a 375, because it's really hard, no matter how many people are over, to finish that bottle. It's so good and so juicy and just the right amount of sweetness that you don't have to drink a lot of it. But you have that with a great cheese. It's unbelievable to finish dinner. You have that with chocolate-covered strawberries. It's phenomenal. If you're like me, you have that with a cigar sitting out in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Around the fireplace. That's fantastic. It's just, we don't think of it all the time. We don't taste it all the time in the tasting room because we're generally tasting other wines. And we don't make too much of it. We make it in half bottles, but I think it's something special that we have that's just really rare. And if you open this, all you do is put a cork in it and you can drink that half bottle all month long. Nothing will ever happen
another
to
beauty.
it.
That's the beauty of that's
fortified.
Fortified. That whole idea of fortified. Make it stronger. Make it more intense. A good fortified wine like a port has the capability of lasting for a couple months.
Yeah. Just
Easy.
such a great way to finish a meal.
Yeah. We have a special guest visitor today. A surprise guest visitor joining us from Winston Hill. This is Lily Graff, the daughter of our winemaker and general manager Todd Graff. This is our father.
Lil.
Hey.
How you doing?
Give us a little background on Lily.
So Lil, what are you doing these days?
I'm taking online classes right now for graduate school. It's pretty fun, but...
Which graduate school are you going to?
I am going to Emory. It's originally based in Atlanta, but we're online for the summer. But I'm going to graduate school for physical therapy.
That's a pretty good school.
Yeah.
And you hope to start on campus in the fall?
That's the plan. I got my housing, so I'll be gone in August.
You miss your kids when they go away to college, and then when they're home for about a month, you go, can you go back to college?
Yeah. Okay.
What time do you have to get up to start your classes now?
So it's East Coast time. All my classes start at 5 a.m. every day. So I've been up for too long.
I wouldn't be able to handle that because I like wine. So
As a parent, you think that's the funniest thing in the world. Yeah.
Lily, as the daughter of a winemaker, were you exposed to good wine when you were in your teenager years?
Yeah, definitely. But growing up here, it doesn't feel very special at all. I'm kind of just like, oh, everyone's parents are involved in wine. But as soon as I went to college, everyone was like, oh my gosh, your dad does winemaking? That is so cool. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Because not every kid's
really
dad
cool.
is a winemaker.
So the great thing that she learned better than my dad did, Lily goes into the cellar and goes, oh, there's 12 of those. I can take one and he won't notice. Where my dad didn't have that knowledge. He took the one only.
He took the one that you had.
At least she knows to take the one with 12 of. Yes.
Yeah, it's good. We have other children
I think we might have another surprise visitor joining us as well.
Who made him... She may drink more than Lily does.
Yeah, I think she does. Yeah, we're teaching them young.
This is Tony's daughter.
There we go.
Say hi.
Hi, Luna.
Hi.
And who you with?
Cheers.
Yes.
Right here. Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers. I did cheers to Lily.
Cheers down.
Yeah.
How old is she now?
Tony, tell us about Luna.
She'll be 2 July 27. Yeah, so.
And she's going to have a brother?
Yeah, she's going to have a little brother in October. Yeah. October 30th.
I'm sorry, and Rosa, I didn't introduce Rosa. Rosa's a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't beat up your brother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's gonna be a good big sister. She's practicing with little one right now. Yeah.
She was all quiet before, but now you got her in your lap and she's on TV. She's got to move around.
She wants to grab everything. So yeah, this is. Yeah, so we'll start her young. Once she's old enough not to wrap me out in school.
Oh, I'd watch out for that one. That's sharp.
I will say one thing which we didn't mention just really quickly. I believe that the generation here that goes to school, each generation, because we are in a wine area, I believe that all the students, because many of the people came from St. Helena High School, work at the winery, they're very respectable to drinking, how to drink, when to drink, how to handle themselves. I think I'm not sure if it's actually taught in school, but I'm sure it's talked about because it's so easy to get here. Yet I don't see lots of problems with it here.
Oh yeah, so growing up in the valley, it's kind of around you, so you learn to respect it. Respect the wine and everything, and so being in high school, it's part of chemistry class. Making the wine and everything.
It's part of the education that you receive.
Education. We don't look at it like, oh, let's go drink wine. We enjoy with dinner. With family,
she wants to cut the cigars.
Here you go.
That's great. There's some sharps, some fire, and alcohol. We got it all for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
We have one more trivia question.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So
this is Leslie, everybody, if you haven't seen her on camera yet.
And shout out to Wendy McMahon of ABC. Wendy, you are overdue for a trip up to Napa Valley. Just saying. We are open and we are taking guests in. It has been busy the last 2 weekends that we've been open, and we're excited to see people.
We've
again.
had great.
When you get a moment, Wendy, come visit us in Napa.
Great guests visiting us and enjoying their time back at the winery safely, considering very much considering other circumstances. Yeah.
All right. Final trivia question of the day. And I'm not sure that any of you mentioned this, but let's see who really knows their Frank Family Vineyards history. What anniversary is Frank Family Vineyards celebrating over the 4th of July weekend? What number? Who knows? Who knows the correct number?
Oh, I can't win.
Tell me.
Okay,
wow.
Kristen Carberry, she's the winner.
Because we didn't mention
27 years, 27th anniversary over 4th of July weekend, so we're excited about
Wasn't Krista here for our 25th anniversary?
Krista was here for the 25th.
That's good.
Yes, she was, yes.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing her soon.
Too.
Hey, Krista.
Bye, Luna.
Bye,
Luna.
And since you're all finishing with the port, it wouldn't be Father's Day if we didn't have a little
Thank you.
for our dad.
Yeah, a great port and cigar pairing. If this is the kind of thing that you might enjoy on a special occasion. There's something about the richness of port and the way it coats the palate, the way that's offset by the smoke of a great cigar.
Don't have to twist my arm for this. I love these. It's terrific. There's something fun of just relaxing with a great port and a cigar. It's just not that I don't also like it with a cognac or something else. Yeah. When I grew up, again, a quick story about my dad. My dad, like I said, was in the meat business, and he went to work every morning at 3 o'clock. And so he'd be home by noon, watched every game show on television so he could answer every trivia question, but smoked. When he woke up in the morning, he put a cigar in his mouth. And literally, I know this is going to sound crazy, but smoked a box of cigars every day. He chewed on them or smoked them. I never once smoked at home once he came home. And lived to 1 month short of 99 years old. He stopped smoking when he retired at like late 50s. But he just every day, he never inhaled. He just smoked or chewed on it. Now picture Williamsburg in Brooklyn, my dad, a rather square guy, and the cigars sticking out of his mouth. He was in control, and that's what he did. It made me think of it, Leslie, when you
What a
brought
great
these out.
image.
Thank you. And I'm going to light up now, and we say goodbye. I don't know. Are we doing more?
Those are our wines today. Those are our wines. And thank you for joining us on this Father's Day weekend as we celebrate being a father, as we celebrate our fathers together.
As we enjoy it.
Yeah, as we enjoy being with our family on this special weekend.
And I'm going to jump in once and just to my two boys, Daryl and Paul, thank you for being you. I'm so happy about how good fathers you are to your kids, and I'm a lucky guy, so it's just nice.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day. Come and visit us at the tasting room. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Happy Father's Day
Happy
to you
Father's
all.
Day.
Enjoy the time with family. Cheers.